Hi guys, today I just wanted to go through a few simple retouching tips and tricks. These are things that you can utilise and use in all your images, and these are things that I find really helpful, and tips and tricks that I've kind of really picked up along the years since I've been retouching. So I'm just going to go through a few simple things. First of all, it's going to be brush settings, then I'm going to talk about high pass selective sharpening, and then Blendif for glow, and then the solar curve, which I have created a free action for you. You can download that in the description box below. And I'm also going to talk a bit about the black and white layer and the ways that these can really help with your retouching. So please stay tuned. Also, please like and subscribe. It really does mean a lot. I'm finding making these videos really fun, and I love the fact that people have been leaving comments. I've also had some messages on Instagram, which has been really nice. It's just nice to know that I'm kind of helping people learn how to retouch, because it's really difficult when you're starting out as a beginner retoucher. It's hard to kind of know where to go to get information. And I just kind of really wanted to create this channel to really help people who are just getting into the industry, and also people who have been retouching for a while who might not know some of these things. So please stay tuned. I hope you enjoy the video, and I will be making more videos soon. Okay, thank you. My first tip when it comes to retouching is to sort of change the brush settings. Here we have this image by Alexander Croft. I haven't touched it at all, I haven't done any retouching, it's completely natural how it was shot. But I wanted to demonstrate with you how I would go about actually cleaning up the skin and the settings that I would use. Okay, so first of all, when it comes to using the healing brush tool, I'll just select that. If you go up here to where you select the brush settings, I usually have the hardness set to about 59%, because I find that when you're using a soft brush, it kind of introduces more blur, and obviously that's not something that we want to have in our images when we're retouching. We want it to be quite sharp and, you know, textured. I also always set the brush at an angle of about 45%, and the roundness about 80, just to have this nice angle to it, because I find that that really does help as well. So now that I've shown you that, I'm just going to zoom in and start cleaning up some of these areas here. So I'm going to do this on a new layer. Okay, so as you can see, that's working quite nicely. And the fact that we've got a little bit of a hard edge to the brush really does help. For instance, if I get rid of this, put it onto 0, and I come in here, you can kind of see it's blurring it out slightly around the edges. So that's not really what we want. So I'm just going to go back up to about 59% again. Yeah, so this is kind of how I go about doing that. The same goes for the clone stamp. I make sure that I set my hardness to about, I'll go with 50%, and put the flow up, and just be working with a small brush. Okay. So as you can see, that's looking slightly more natural. If I took the hardness down again, just to demonstrate, you see that's just blending out the edges slightly too much. So go back to about 59. I just find it's like a nice way to work. I like having the tool settings like that. For some reason my computer's being really slow today, so sorry for the lag. Hopefully it's not too distracting. Okay. I am going to leave these like moles and stuff, because they are kind of, you know, part of the model's skin texture. I'm just getting rid of the areas that probably wouldn't, you know, sort of be there in a little while. Like these little pimples and stuff, obviously they're not permanent fixtures on her skin. I'm just working with a small brush, slow brush, don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, so that is how I would work with the clone and the heal tool. Obviously when you're working with the spot healing brush, you can also adjust the hardness. So you could just come in here and just sort of click on these different areas. Yeah, so basically to take away from this little section is just to adjust the hardness of your brush, make sure that it's kind of more up in the sort of like harder percentage than the softer percentage, just so that you're keeping things really nice and textured and quite precise. And also for the healing brush tool, make sure you angle it as well, because that just really does help when you're working on really textured areas. So yes, I'm not going to do all the healing because that will just take forever, but that was just a small demonstration of how you go about using those tools. Another tip when it comes to retouching is selective sharpening using the high pass filter. So I'm just going to demonstrate on this image that I've retouched by Emilie Granowska. All the skin work's done, all the colour grading, everything like that. It's all sort of like flattened and saved as a JPEG. But I'm just going to show how I would go about selective sharpening for this image. So I'll just create another group, call this Selective Sharpening, and another layer. And now I'm just going to go Shift, Control, Alt and E to create a stamp pull mask. And then I will go down into Filter, Other, High Pass. Sorry for it being so slow, I don't know what's happening today. I'm going to keep it relatively low on the radius. I'll probably go for about a 5, I reckon, just so there's a bit of added boost, but nothing too crazy. And I'm going to set that to either soft light, let me scroll in and have a little look, or I'll go for linear light. It's a bit harsh. Go for soft light. Then I'm going to create a layer mask, and I'm going to invert that using Control and I. Okay, so now the layer mask is black. Then I'm going to select my brush, make sure I have white selected, put the flow up, and I'm just going to brush onto areas that I would like to have more sharpness, like the eyes, the eyebrows. As you can see, that's just boosted those areas without looking too crazy. Same with the lips. Maybe just add a bit of that texture back in there, a bit of sharpness on the highlights. And you could also sharpen sections of the hair as well if you wanted to show that highlight. And as you can see, it doesn't really make that much of a difference when you're viewing it from, you know, quite far out. But when you actually zoom in and you turn that off and on, you can see these areas are definitely sharper than the rest of the image. But it doesn't look, you know, unnatural. It's just a nice way to make sure that you're kind of really highlighting those areas that you want to draw the eye to. For instance, the eyes, the lips, sections of the hair, any other kind of details. For instance, if there was any jewellery, you could use this layer mask as well and just kind of really highlight those details. So it's just a nice way to really boost your images. Making use of the Blendif Slider is also a really good tip when it comes to retouching. I'm going to demonstrate on this image here that I've retouched. All the skin work's done, colour grading, everything like that, it's all finalised. And this image is by MBodet. So what I'm going to be doing is creating a new group, just to keep it all neat and tidy. And I'm going to go in here, go to curves, and I'm just going to make that slightly brighter, I'd say around about here, and then I'm just going to right click and go to blending options, and then we have these two sliders down here, the Blendif sliders, and I'm just going to drag the bottom one from the left across to the right, and as you can see it starts changing on the screen. When it gets to say around about here where most of the highlighted areas are selected, I'm just going to press Alt and click, and then I'm just going to drag this half over here to the right, so you're just left with like one little half there, and then I just click OK, and if I turn that off and on, you can see that's kind of added a nice boost to the highlights there. You can adjust the sort of like blending layers. If you go to soft light, it's more natural, and obviously you can adjust the opacity as well. So if I bring that down to about 60, you can just see it's really boosted those areas, but kept it looking quite natural as well. It's not too in your face and too crazy. So that's just a nice way I like to boost the highlights in an image, but keep it natural as well. And that's just using the Blendif sliders. Okay, this tip is to do with the solar curves. This is a really handy technique if you want to be cleaning up background or getting rid of flyaway hairs and things like that, and it just really does help to ensure that you're getting every single detail. So I have actually created a free action so everyone can try this out, so I'll just run that now. And I will actually go into the layer and show you exactly what it is. Okay, so basically within this group you have the curves layer, and it's just like a zigzag. I've put the curves on the RGB layer, and they've all just get rid of that. They've all just kind of gone zigzag, zigzag, zig, and it just really does help to identify areas that do need cleaning. So for instance, you can see down here on the background there's a lot of smudgy areas which we will actually get rid of, but if I turn the curves layer off, you can't really see them. So it's not very good if you're going to be retouching an image that is going to be blown up to like a huge size, and you don't actually work on the background, because then all those details will probably be noticeable. It's not too much of a problem if you're just going to be posting your images on social media, but if you are going to be having them printed out, I do advise double checking the background and making sure there's no sort of like dusts or specks and things like that. Okay, so I'll turn that back on, and we can click here on the work here with current and below, and I'm just going to go in with the healing brush tool first, current and below, and I'm going to work on these areas here. Just making sure I'm getting rid of that smudged area. And it is very important that you work with the current and below settings, and you're working underneath that curves layer, because if you're working above it, you're going to pick up on these strange colours that are actually on the curves layer, and obviously you don't want those in your final image. This is just a kind of like sort of final check. If I turn that off and on, you can see the difference that's made if I turn the curves off. See, you can't even really see it. It's just, you know that it's been cleaned up. So in a normal sort of image, I would work on all these smudged areas, making sure that I was kind of getting rid of all these dots and any sort of like dust and scratches and things like that, just to make sure it was all completely uniform. But that would take forever, and I only want this to be a quick video, so I won't do any more sort of work on the background. But I will just show you what I would do with these flyaway hairs here. If I turn the curves layer off, they're not really that noticeable, are they? But as soon as I turn the curves layer back on, you can see them all really, really well. So with something like this, I would go in with the clone stamp tool, and I would set the flow to quite a low number. I'll just leave it at 19. I'd have the sample set to current and below again. It's very important. And then I would just kind of go in here and start selecting areas just to clone. With areas like this, for instance, again, you can go in with the healing brush tool just to help blend that sort of like smudged colour better, because when you're working with the clone tool, you are just kind of like sampling a direct area, and that's always going to be kind of what the clone stamp sort of does. So with the healing brush tool, you're going to be blending out the colours as well as the texture, so it does kind of really help if you have an area that's sort of like a slight gradient, like the background in this image. If I just turn that off and on, there we go. It does kind of really help to blend it out and ensure you're not messing things up. But if you're going to be working quite close to the hair edge, you do want to be using the clone stamp tool, because otherwise you'll start sampling colours from the hair and putting that onto the background, and it just won't look good. It won't look good at all. So I do advise keeping an eye on that. I'm just going to bring the flow down slightly. As you can just see, it's blending out quite nicely. And I would just continue to do that the whole way around the head. Again, I'm not going to be doing the whole lot today because it'll just be quite boring for everyone, I think. Just sitting there watching me clone out hair. That's not really fun, is it? I'm not sure whether anyone really likes doing hair retouching. But, oh, well, I'm sure there are people out there. It can be quite therapeutic, I imagine. But I'm not a fan of it at all. No, it's just far too fiddly and annoying for me. I much prefer doing skin retouching. I think it's a lot more therapeutic than hair retouching. I just get frustrated when I'm doing hair. Okay. So as I say, you go the whole way around the edge, but you want to make sure that you're not leaving like a really, really blunt kind of cutout effect to the hair. But yes, so that is the solar curve check. My final tip for today is using the black and white layer, and this is a fantastic tip. I love doing this on all the images that I work on. I really do find it sort of really does help to tie everything together and really finalize the image. So I've got this image that I retouched by Ruslan Levitskiy. I hope I've pronounced that right. I've done all the skim work, everything's all sorted, all the color toning, everything like that. So this is the final image and I've saved it as a JPEG. So basically, using the black and white layer is very, very simple. You just create a new group and I'll go in here and I'll go to black and white. And then first of all, you don't have to do this for all the images, but if I have an image that I think is slightly too saturated, I'll probably go in with the first black and white layer and set it to about 8%. And that's just going to help get rid of some of these oversaturated areas. And it just kind of works quite nicely. You don't have to do that. It's just a sort of personal thing that you can do if you so wish. So then I'm going to create another black and white layer. And this is where the magic happens. So I'm going to set this to luminosity. And then I'm just going to adjust these sliders. To be affecting the skin, you'll probably mainly be sticking with the reds and the yellows. So you can kind of, you know, slide these up and down as you wish to see what you like, what really suits your image. For this, I quite like the contrast effect by pulling the reds down and keeping the yellows sort of around about 50, kind of halfway. If I turn that off and on, you can just see that that's really enhanced that texture. Depending on what other image, like colours are in your image, you can go in and start playing with the greens, the cyans, the blues and the magentas as well, but there aren't really that many colours in this image here. As I say, I've already colour graded it. This is just to demonstrate how I use the black and white layer. So maybe I could pull the pinks down. Yeah, it's not really doing anything because there aren't really any pinks in this image. So yeah, the most important thing with the black and white layer is to make sure it is set to luminosity, okay? Because then that's just going to be affecting the lights, like the brightness and the contrast of your image. It's not going to be affecting like the color tones, which you obviously don't want if you've set it to black and white, because if you just went to normal, your image would just be black and white. So we always go to luminosity, and that's just a nice way to really enhance the texture in your image and really tie things together. So that concludes my tips video. I hope that you found it interesting. If you have any questions about anything, please don't hesitate to get in touch or leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Also, as I say, please remember to subscribe. I am going to be releasing a lot more videos in the future, including a sort of like full retouching tutorial as well, because a lot of people have been asking me for that. It's just kind of finding the time to really sit down and record it all, because there's so much to go through. But I hope you found this video interesting and informative. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to know, if you have any ideas for future videos, everything like that. And also please remember to subscribe so you can keep up to date with all my future videos. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.